Hi everyone, I'm Justin Mastine Frost from Shark Magazine. Today we're at Bulgari and we're about to take a closer look at the Octo Finissimo. When you think of luxury watchmaking as a broader topic, it's often the same three words that come to mind: heritage, legacy, tradition. For now, we're throwing those anachronisms out the window because this is Bulgari and this is the Octo Finissimo World Record Saga. To keep the history lesson brief, it all began when Sotiriou Bulgari opened his silversmithing shop in Rome in the late 1800s. By the early 1960s, the brand had evolved into a high jewelry maker loved by most Hollywood stars. Fast forward to the last decade, and Bulgari has become one of the leaders when it comes to complicated ultra-thin watches. What we have in front of us is incredibly special. We have 8 extremely rare watches. 8 watches that broke new ground when they were launched and set world records. And even more than that, these are 8 watches that were launched within an 8-year period. The story starts with the 2014 Octo Finissimo Tourbillon manual and carries on to 2022 with the launch of the Octo Finissimo Ultra, a watch that's only 1.8 millimeters thick. Seeing this collection of 8 watches together, I'd argue that it's probably the rarest set of modern watches I've seen in one place, let alone in Canada. While our written feature is going to dive into all 8 of these watches separately, for now we're going to take a look at our 3 favorites.
When looking at these world record-breaking watches, we have to start at the beginning. When the Octo Finissimo Tourbillon manual launched in 2014, it set the record for being the world's thinnest tourbillon movement in the world. This is especially important because that record hadn't been broken for quite a long time. The BVL caliber 268 is only 1.95 millimeters thick, and to put that into context, that's the exact same thickness as a Canadian loonie. This first world record for Bulgari really set the tone of what was to come from the brand. Next on the list, we have to look at the Octo Finissimo Automatic that launched in 2017. This is the simplest watch of the set, but it's also easily one of the most desirable and the most approachable from a dollars and cents standpoint. When it launched, this piece set the record for the slimmest ultra-thin self-winding watch on the market, and at 5.15 millimeters thick, it wears incredibly comfortable on the wrist. Much like the Tourbillon manual, the movement also set a record. The movement itself in this automatic version is 2.23 millimeters thick. Between the thin profile of the case and the suppleness of the bracelet, this is the first watch of the series to really have that daily wear appeal that collectors were looking for. Even a quick look at the dial of the Octo Finissimo Tourbillon chronograph skeleton automatic, you can see quite easily why this had to make our list. The model's based on the chronograph GMT that the brand launched a year prior, but it adds a tourbillon to the mix in place of the GMT complication. The brand also stripped away the majority of the dial, allowing you to take a closer look at its inner working. Even though there's a 2-pusher configuration, technically this is a mono-pusher chronograph, which means the start, stop, and reset functions are all handled by that top pusher at 2 o'clock. So why is there a bottom pusher? Well, that's used for the crown. In this case, the pusher acts as a toggle, so when you press it once, you're able to wind the watch, and then you push it again to be able to set the time. Looking at this model by the numbers, the watch is 7.4 millimeters thick, with a movement of only 3.5 millimeters. We were initially only planning at looking at 3 watches for this video series, but once we realized there was a minute repeater in the room, we had to include that as well. The Octo Finissimo Minute Repeater launched in 2016. Much like its siblings, the Minute Repeater breaks records for both the thickness of the watch at 6.85 millimeters thick and for the movement at 3.12 millimeters. Of the variety of things that sets this watch apart, the Minute Repeater is cased in titanium, which is pretty uncommon, whereas most Minute Repeaters are done in gold or platinum or steel. In case you're less familiar, the idea behind a Minute Repeater is to tell time using sound. By pressing a button on the side of the case, a pair of small hammers are activated, striking a gong in the watch movement. The use of titanium is very purposeful, because the density of the metal allows the sound to be amplified louder than you'd get out of a softer material. If you look closely at the dial, you'll notice the markers are all cutouts. Now this is designed to allow the sound of the minute repeater chime to echo through off of the sapphire crystal. Those hammers are linked to the watch movement, and when activated, they'll chime out the current time like this. Looking at this entire record-breaking collection, it's easy to see how we could spend hours going through them all piece by piece, detail by detail. Unfortunately, that's going to have to wait for another time.